Hi everyone, welcome back. We're going to continue the modeling series by now modeling the head. In the last few videos, we just modeled the body, the gloves, and the boots. So to model the head, let's just get right into it. Hold Shift, right click, and create a sphere. And let's just jump to our front view and put this in position. All right. Now this is going to be our frame of reference for our eyeball. All right, I'm going to jump to our sphere or channel box and rotate this 90 degrees. And I want to bump this up, I already know, to about 4.3 centimeters. All right. And also jump to the side view and kind of put it in position. Remember, the eyeball isn't going to be the radius of this here. It's going to be kind of this arc of the sphere, so that's why it needs to be a bit larger. All right, so I'm going to put that right about here on the side view, and then the front view you can kind of see where it's at. I'm actually going to move it a little bit more to the side here, and this looks fine. And what I want to do before going any further is let's just actually make this look like an eyeball. All right, so what we want to do now is select the faces on the outer eye here. All right, so if I select kind of this face loop around here, maybe these sets of faces in here, and hold tab and just select the rest of the inner faces. Now just keep in mind I am using the default subdivision axes of 20 and 20. All right, so just make sure if you're following along using kind of the same settings. All right, and then once I have that, I just want to go ahead and in the side view, zoom in here and just scale these completely flat. All right, so this is going to help give us the iris of the eye, and as you can imagine, it's not perfectly spherical. So you know it is a concave surface. And then from here, we'll go ahead now and select these interfaces. Let's hold tab. And then just simply move these in a little bit like this. Doesn't need to be perfect. And then let's hold Shift and move this time. This is just going to straight extrude these faces, and we're just going to extrude these a little bit to give this some depth. Okay, and here we are now. You can kind of see what we have, and what I want to do is let's grab our multi-cut tool, Shift right click, multi-cut, and let's add some edges here. Okay, and I'm going to hold Control and left click here on the outer edge, and then let's zoom into more of the pupil, and we're going to add one here and then add one right inside. Okay, so here's where we're at, and then you can hold Shift right click, and then we're going to go to soften edges, and for this we're actually going to just completely soften the edge, and we have a nice shaped eye. And to give this a little bit more detail, we're going to go ahead and actually just quickly apply some materials. All right, now I will go ahead and delete history now that we're happy with the overall shape. And again, if you select this face loop here, maybe I'll grab this inner one, and then remember, if you hold Shift period, you'll grow selection, and with that selection grown, we can hold right click and just assign favorite material. I'm just going to simply apply a blend or Phong, it doesn't matter, I just did Phong, and I'm going to set color, and I'm going to make this kind of a brown material. You know, just give them some brown eyes or whatever. Good. We have that. And then these interfaces, so I can go ahead and hold tab. Now I'll go to face mode and hold tab and then left click around. Perfect. And then grow this selection. And this is going to be his pupil. Oops, I have to make sure that I don't have any faces selected. Let me do that again. Perfect. And I'm going to do hold right click again. Nothing, I'm not holding Shift or anything. It's just regular right click. And then assign favorite material, and we'll do another Phong. Okay, and then from here, we'll go ahead and really just make this black. If you slide all the way to the left, it'll automatically set color to black. Okay, and there we are. And if you really want to make the rest of this kind of the regular eyeball color, you can just kind of select any one of these face loops here and just continue to grow selection. So again, that's just shift period and grow that selection up until you get about here, and then assign favorite material again, and let's quickly give that a white material. Great. So there's our eyeball, and that's going to be, again, a great frame of reference as we're going through and modeling this. And now that we have this eyeball set up, let's take a look at some reference, all right? So if we look at this reference that we're going for, again, this kind of stylized approach you can see in some of these other character samples here. And the topology overall is going to be focusing on nice, simple, clean edge flow, clean topology, and, you know, with the end goal being facial animation, right? So you can see how there's edge loops focusing around the orbit of the eye, and then edge loops that are kind of going from the eye down to the mouth. So when the character smiles and moves his mouth, the cheeks, and it'll affect the cheekbones, cheek muscles, and affect the eye. You know, when you smile, typically, genuinely, you smile with your whole face. So we want to make sure we just don't take these face loops and move these straight down and straight to the side. We really want to make sure that they go and are routed where they need to be. All right. So again, there's some really good examples from Anatomy for Sculptors. You can see this right on their ArtStation here. And they kind of also break down the overall form of the head. Now we're going to stick in between really kind of these two here. We're not going to go clearly this detailed here since we're working with a stylized character. All right. Now, if I look back to our Photoshop document, you can see again how we planned our topology, right? And this isn't a one-to-one, but again, it's giving us a good guide on how we want to approach attaching the facial topology of the eye to the mouth, to the rest of the head, to the body, so on and so forth. So we're keeping this in mind. I have these up on my other monitor. All of this reference is helping me as I'm working and modeling this character. All right. Now there are many ways of modeling characters or just modeling anything. We kind of looked at, you know, box modeling, plane modeling, and you certainly can go that route. When it comes to head modeling and just something as organic as the head, I typically don't use planar modeling for that. And I'll show you why. So if I quickly go ahead and create just a plane with one-to-one subdivisions, put that in position for the eye, right about here. I actually want to maybe drop this just a little bit here. A little bit more aligned in our front view, and grab our plane again. You can see that I can just kind of put this in position, rotate this, move this, and from here you can just, well, really, yeah, scale it up and just start edge copying, right? So I can go ahead and grab this edge here, edge copy, move, edge copy, move, you know, and start working from there. But I like to take one more step before I do this. And remember, you can use extrude or hold W and shift, right? So go to your W tool, so move tool, and then hold shift now and just move, right? And that's going to edge copy. All right. Now, again, this is okay, but you can see that you have to be really careful about where your edges go, and then now you have to make sure to jump from the side view, front view, perspective view, when really we can just get a lot further with a lot less effort. Okay, so I'm going to actually just straight up delete this, and I'll show you what I mean. The first thing that I want to do is create a cube. All right, now what we're going to be doing, we're just going to be sculpting for a little bit. So let's hold shift right click and let's create a cube. And let's move this cube up in the front view and really scale this up. All right. And from here, hold shift, right click, and let's smooth. So we're going to subdivide this mesh, and we're only going to subdivide it twice. Okay, so give it 2 divisions. Type in 2 or middle mouse drag it in either directions, but you want to end up about 2. Okay, and I'm going to position this here for his head. All right. So let's go ahead and kind of get it here. Now, if we take a look at our character and our design, his head isn't a perfect sphere. So we want to make sure to kind of adjust the overall form here. And the way that we want to do that is with this lower topology, right? We can use what's called soft select. So if I go to my modeling toolkit here, and you can see soft select here, and expand this and enable it. Now, a quick shortcut is simply, hit B. And you can see this color gradient forming, okay? Now, if you hold B while middle mouse dragging in any direction, left and right, you can see that the fall off increases, okay? So this is great. So we can use this to adjust and modify the overall form. So I can go to symmetry here and re-enable world X, and now I can start positioning and adjusting the overall form. And I'm really going to actually kind of get up there and start moving some vertices around. Okay, so we're just going to move some verts in. If this is a little bit too big, we can always middle mouse, hold B, middle mouse drag. We're going to move again this here. The front vertices is going to bring this down. And remember, because he's got a lot of hair, we don't want the sides of the head, right? The core of his head to be out here where his hair is. It's actually going to probably be in quite a few pixels, all right? So let's just continue to adjust the form, moving some things around. And we're doing this strictly from the side view. We're going to kind of keep it out here for the mouth. And you can see we're starting to get something that looks a little bit more like a head. All right. And maybe I'll grab this one. I'll move that back out. Oh, so I think this is good. Maybe move this a little bit back out. All right. So you get the idea. We're just doing large scale changes here. As we're moving some things around. Now let's jump to the front view, and we're going to do the same thing here. All right, so you can see I'm in X-ray mode, and you can kind of see how his head's quite a bit oblong. I'm going to bring these outside verts in. Okay, so it's not so much. It doesn't look so much like a football. Bring that in just a little bit, and remember we're taking a look at the overall form, and of course we do want to keep these in mind. And let's just jump to perspective view. And here's where we're at so far. And we're gonna have to make some adjustments here for the nose here. But I think all in all, we're on the right track, right? Maybe bring this one down here towards the back top of the head. Okay. And so once we get to a good spot here, what you can do now is take this overall form. Let's see here. We can make some adjustments here in the perspective viewport. Kind of these large scale changes. And I'm going to bring back this for kind of flatten his face just a little bit. Okay. Something like that. Great. Now, before we jump up another subdivision and start actually sculpting, I want to just make sure that we make any final large scale adjustments here. Just gonna bring that in a little bit. Remember, we don't want it to be too far out wherever the hair is. So something like that. And I actually want to bring this up here for the nose. And I want to at least rough in the nose, okay? And in order to do that, like this, maybe actually bring this one down a bit here. And kind of flatten this on the top. Cool. Yeah, I think this is fine. We can always make adjustments later. And let's go ahead and select this. And I always recommend duplicating hiding. So you can always revert back to this if you don't like some of the changes that you've made previously. So now that I have that, I'll go ahead, shift, right click, and subdivide. Now that we have this subdivision here, I'm going to just continue to move some of this geometry. All right. And what I want to do is be a little bit more focused here. And this is what's going to help give us kind of that form here for the eyes. Something like this. Okay, let's make sure to jump to the front view, make sure things are looking okay. And we can kind of see what's going. You can already start to see the eyeball start to kind of come through. Okay, and maybe push this one in just a little bit. And we're going to do some sculpting to kind of help alleviate that. I'll actually maybe bring these back in and we'll do the rest through sculpting, just so we can start to see the eye. Okay, so now that we have this, go ahead and subdivide again. And just apply smooth and apply 2 more smooths. All right. And for the smooth tool, we can actually now start using our sculpting tool. So you can see here we have sculpting, and here's our sculpting tab. And if I just go ahead and select the mesh and grab the sculpt tool, and so you can see the settings that I'm using, we have show hide tools. Now I'm going to hide our outliner here real quick. And I'm going to go ahead and reset tool so you can see the original settings. You can see the brush is fairly large. The strength is fairly high. If you hold B and left click, you can see I can reduce the size. And if you do M left click, you can also reduce the strength. So if you just reduce the size and start to sculpt, you can see it's fairly strong. And that's with 6. With 15, it is incredibly strong. So we definitely want to lower this quite a bit. Maybe a strength of 2.5 is fine, and size of about 4. And then we can start sculpt, and we want to just start pushing some geometry back. Now, if you just standard grab the sculpt tool and left click, you can see that it's pushing or pulling geometry out. If you want to push geometry in or start to cut in, boom, hold control. Okay, now you can definitely get by with using a mouse. Okay, I'm actually gonna undo that, and I'm gonna grab my pen tablet, my Wacom pen tablet. You can use whatever brand that you want. If you have a pen tablet with pen sensitivity, I highly recommend you switch over to using that. Okay. So I'm now gonna just quickly jump to the front view. Hold control, and I'm just gonna start pushing some of this geometry in for our eyeball. Okay, and now that I have that, I can kind of jump to the front, and you can see, all right, not too bad. He does look a little bit skeletal right now, and it was kind of pushed a little bit too far back. So I'm gonna undo that just a little bit, maybe lower the strength even more, so about 1.5, and just kind of push some things in. Now, if you start to push in and you don't want to push in, you can definitely hold shift. And what that does, it automatically gives you the smooth tool here. Okay. So you can hold shift and just kind of smooth some detail back. And you can see how I'm just, again, pushing some of that geometry. And we want to kind of keep it right around the eyeball. And around the eyeball, this is where we want to kind of try to get pretty close to the shape that we want. And you can see, I'm not going to worry too much about how it looks inside the eyeball. Okay. All right. So we're not going to go too crazy here, but if I jump back in, you can see that we do need this little bit of a divot here. So I'm going to kind of, push that in just a little bit more. We're starting to get that detail there, which is great. And I can pull this out here. Same thing with the mouth here. So I'm just kind of pulling some geometry out and using my shift brush. So all in all, that'll kind of keep things a little bit more focused here. All right. So nothing too crazy. I'm just using the head here you know, this head here to give us the overall form. All right, so I'm not going to spend too much more time. I think I have enough to work off of, right? We have this geometry here, maybe just one more, actually, now that I see it, right about the kind of this brow here, and just smooth that back. Okay, I think that'll be good. And we can see we can make some adjustments, large scale adjustments, once we do some retopo. All right, so I'm going to put my pen down and we're going back to using our regular mouse. So let's see where we're at. Okay, looking good. So let's go ahead now and start using a new modeling toolkit, which is QuadDraw. All right, now in order to use QuadDraw, you have to set a live surface. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to go here, select the eyeball, because that's what I want to start with, and then go to the icon here at the top, and it says make the selected object live. Perfect. Let's go ahead and do that. Well, what did I just do? Let's jump to QuadDraw and see. So now we are in the modeling toolkit. We have QuadDraw enabled, and if you go down here, you have keyboard, mouse, and shortcuts. So you can see that you can do all sorts of things. LMB's left mouse button, MMB's middle mouse button, and I don't think there's any, oh, there is, RMB's right mouse button, and then a combination of all of those, plus Control Shift Tab, will give you all sorts of controls. So what QuadDraw is it does exactly as it says. You draw quads, you draw polygons, okay? So in order to do that, you just left click, left click, left click, left click. You create these dots and you hold shift and you click again, left click again, and you've created what's now called a quad, which is just a four-sided polygon. Perfect. And as you can imagine, it's very intuitive and you can start to create topology based off of that. Now, you can see these weird colored dots. I just left soft select on, so just press B if you accidentally did that. If not, you're good. And then I'm going to actually hide my tool settings now so we've got more real estate. And we can now, again, referring to our PureRef reference, start building out topology. Okay, now that we have the overall form of the face as a rough sculpt, we can just start doing face loop modeling. So I'm going to actually delete these. Now, in order to delete these, you hold Control Shift left click, and I'm going to jump to the front view here, and I'm going to go ahead and now just position these. Now, if you want to adjust already created vertices, just left click them or middle mouse button to move them. And let's just go ahead and using the front view. Now I'm in X-ray mode. If you don't want to be in X-ray mode, you can just kind of turn that off, and you can see we can start to model around the eye. Now what I want to do is keep this outer vert right at the intersection of the eyeball and my head sculpt. So I'm just going to go around the face here, and I'm not going to go crazy high poly. I'm just going to kind of initially model in these face loops. Okay, again, all I'm doing is pressing left click and shift left click to grow selection. So left click, hold shift, left click. Perfect. Again, very intuitive. You can get all sorts of geometry built up pretty fast. So that's, I just created this right around the eye, which is looking good. And now I can kind of go to the front view and see how this looks, or excuse me, side view. And you can see I can bring that back a little bit. What I'm actually going to do is bring this back in. Sometimes it's a little bit hard to tell depth from orthographic view. So you can see I can just start to bring that in. Now, I don't want my eye to be perfectly spherical, right? So again, if I look here, you can see all sorts of reference for the eye. It's more of this almond shape. It gets tighter around the corners of the eye. I mean, you can take a look in the mirror, see how your eyeball is shaped. And we want to kind of stick with something like that, this overall almond shape. And you can see kind of the direction of the eyeball as well. Okay, so we want to kind of tighten these here at the corner of the eye, the inner corner. Right? And I'm actually going to add one more. Now, did you see that? Now, in order to add, just hold Control, left click, boom. So now you have that, which is great. All right, and again, I'm just kind of moving. Now, if you want to delete, again, Control Shift to delete, and then Shift to bring it back, or Control left click will add, and it's conforming to the geometry that we have here, which is great. All right, so I think this is looking good here, and yeah, I won't spend too much time. We can tweak this shape a little bit later. I think this is fine. All right, so we're here. I'm looking at it there in the perspective view, and what I can do now is start to grow off of that. So I'm actually going to go to object mode now and select my face. This is the whole reason we have this sculpt here, right? So select this, and we're now going to disable live surface, and this will now become our live surface. So I will grab my outliner, I will grab the poly surface, and I will start building up with Quadra again. All right, and again, we're referencing our facial topology plan and examples, and we're just going to do an edge loop or a face loop that runs around the orbit of the eye. Okay, so something like this. Great. All right, and we're gonna keep it going here for the bridge of the nose, or I say that towards the bridge of the nose. Okay, so look at that. We're starting to build up some geometry, which is looking good. And I'm gonna move these out a little bit more. All right, and what I'm gonna do now is jump to the front view and kind of make sure I have a good idea of where this is where we're going to position the nose. All right, so again, I'm going to do one more face loop around here, like this. And it's going to, you know, as we get out a little bit wider, it's going to be less circular, but it's still going to be a face loop. And just left clicking around. This is giving me complete control. You can see that, again, I'm focusing first on the face loops here, right? I'm not just going in, and you can actually hold tab here. And you can see you can actually extrude these like this, all right? But for right now, I want to be a bit more precise and plan out some topology, all right? So, if I go back to my front view, I now want to create the nose geometry. Now, I don't want to just go straight across and kind of what I was just saying. You can see if I hold tab, left click, and go straight across, you can hold tab, left click, boom. And you can kind of do that. I don't want to do that, right? Because this is going to be too flat, and it's not going to give me good geometry for my nose. And it's not going to give me geometry for animation, or, you know, if the nose needs to animate. So let's just give some edge loops and face loops around this nose area here. All right. Now, how am I going to do that? I'm just going to go here, and maybe I'm just kind of thinking about how to apply this face loop. And the way that I want to do that, instead of just adding two faces here and merging them, I actually want to create those 2 points like this, but move this up a little bit like this, and add 2 more down here. So look what we just created. We started to create a face loop here, and we're going to do that as we go up the eye. So I'm going to bring this one down here, and we want to do the same things. Instead of going straight across, we're going to angle it down, add 2 more nodes here, and now we've just created a face loop that runs all the way around the nose. Great. So this gives us some good topology here, and I can add another one here. And what I also want to do is just kind of move these over, because we're going to need some more geometry for the center of the face here. You can kind of see where we're going here, and add that in. Perfect. And what's nice is you can continue to add these face loops up here, like this, like so. And then once you've added more geometry here, you can just hold Control and left click. So you can see how you can very quickly add in geometry. All right. Now, what's nice, another tool, is you can use what's called relax. So holding shift, look at that. It's going to go ahead and kind of space these vertices out a bit. Now, it's not going to do the center ones unless you change the settings, which is fine. But this is going to relax these a bit and space these out. All right. So far, so good. We've got some nice geometry for the nose. We've got some nice geometry for the eyes. Let's go ahead now and do it for the mouth. So here, instead of extruding down, the first thing I'm going to do is add or plan my topology for my mouth. So we're just going to add this face loop here. Okay. And I always recommend this technique. Don't just extrude down and start then cutting in faces. Add in your complex face loops, and then you can go ahead and add more geometry. And, you know, that'll allow you to connect the geometry and do all sorts of things. All right. So here, I created this face loop. You can see that it goes all the way around. Keep in mind, I did give, you know, this a, how many do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe I'll give this, you know, let's just take a look at a reference, right? You can see that there's quite a bit of creases going into this corner of the mouth. So I would recommend, you know, this is actually really low poly. So I would recommend maybe giving it one more. So we can hold Control Shift and kind of add that in there. And great. So now that we have that, let's just go ahead and start to now connect this topology, right? Because again, quickly jumping back here, you can see how we want to connect the eye to the mouth. And we can do that just by simply routing our edge loops. So you can see I can go here, here. So this is from our nose. And I'm going to bring this one from our eye down into our mouth. Okay. Won't worry about being too crazy neat or anything. And before connecting, I do want to do, again, one more face loop to protect the geometry and the loop here that we have for the mouth. All right, so that's looking good there. And then you can start to route the geometry in different directions. So now instead of continuing to go too far across and looping, we can continue to extrude this down towards the neck, base of the neck. Something like this. All right. And you can kind of see how I'm just routing these down. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to go vert by vert here. We're going to do some large scale adjustments here, but I think this is good so far. Got this nice face loop. We can space these out in, you know, in a little bit here. And we got these. All right. So here's what I got. I'm going to do one more face loop going around here. And then I'll show you another cool technique that we can use for adding large scale geometry. Now I'm going to use tab middle mouse button, and you can see that I can just add that over there. And we can maybe change this if need be, but let's move on to quickly the next step. So there. What do I have now? I have this eye loop here, this protected eye loop. I have these edge loops routing down to the mouth. I have this face loop and edge loop going around the nose, right? And this edge loop going around the mouth. These are all edge. This is all edge flow and topology that you need for animation, especially facial animation, right? So again, you can kind of see with these examples here. Again, I'll keep kind of referring to these, all right? So that's looking good. What I want to do now is just maybe move these in. Let's show you a cool tool that'll add geometry here. Now, just for the sake of consistency, I will go ahead and duplicate this, Control D and Control G to group it, and jump to Channel Box Editor, and I'll scale -1. And so now I can add that to the other side, and it'll look a bit more consistent, all right? So now what do I want to do? I want to hold Shift, create another cube, position it around the middle of the head, scale it up, and do the same thing we did previously, which was subdivide, shift right click, smooth, and do it just 2 times. Okay, perfect. So we have this now, and what we want to do is actually scale this up just a bit. All right, and I'm going to go to X-ray mode, and I'm going to select this and disable make live. All right, and then select the cube and not the sphere, the high poly head, Control 1 to isolate. And again, I'm in X-ray mode. And what I want to do is use a deform tool, right? So we're in the modeling tab, go to deform, and then grab shrink wrap, not the shrink wrap down here. We want to use the shrink wrap right here, but hit the settings. Now, what's nice is shrink wrap does kind of what it says. It'll take one mesh and wrap it around another. All right. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, this is the default settings you have. And if you just simply hit apply, well, take a look at what happens. It does not look like it's doing what it should. All right. So these are the settings I typically use and get good progress or get good results. I'll change this to closest and just have closest if no intersection, and then apply. Boom. There you go. So now we can close this. And what I actually want to do is delete the history. So we're going to jump back to our poly modeling tool and use this icon to delete history. And let's take a look now. Now, of course, what I want to do is that it didn't really do a good job here in the middle, which is fine. There's just simply not enough geometry. Just hold tab and just delete these interfaces. All right. And what I'm actually going to do, if I looked at edge faces, you can see I'm going to actually hold tab and just do that next face, next set of faces. We actually can grow that selection, so I'll use shift period, delete. You know what? Let's keep that. Let's keep that. I want to keep that, and we'll see if we need to delete it. Okay, and Control 1, select the face we retopoed. All right, so here we are here, and we can kind of see what's going on, and we're gonna just start, you know, eventually combining this. So I will for sure delete this set of face loops here, like this. Perfect. And then now I can combine these two. You know what? I know I said I will delete the face loop, but I actually want to delete it right up until the forehead. So I'm going to grab this. Sorry about that. So I'll just delete these guys here. Perfect. And I'll just control slide these guys here. All right. Now that I got that, let's combine these two meshes. Okay. So I'm going to select both of them, hold shift, right click, combine. Okay. Now we got a mess of history here, especially when you use quad draw, you're going to append a lot, right? That's a function essentially of creating new geometry. So I'm just going to delete history, right? We're keeping things clean and it's removing these extra groups here. So delete history. And if you haven't, do make sure to kind of increment save, Control Alt save if you're doing a lot of work here. All right. And I'm going to hit Control 1 to exit isolate mode. Let's go back and select this, our high poly head, our sculpt head, and we're going to go ahead and make it live. All right. Now I can select my base mesh that I have, and you probably guessed it, jump back to quad draw mode. All right. So now we can start combining these into one mesh, and we can start adding topology together. Okay, if things are kind of overlapping too much, no worries, just hold Control Shift and just kind of start deleting faces that you don't need. All right, and we can just start kind of, it's really like a puzzle at this point. We're just going to start adding more geometry. All right, so we can see we can start adding more here. And actually what I want to do for our sculpt, sorry about this, I forgot to attach the eyeballs. I want to select these eyeballs, duplicate them, okay? And then select our head topology and combine them, because I don't want to get rid of them entirely. And then we can combine those. So combine. So just so you see what we have, this is all now one mesh, and we can delete history. All good, you can see. And then I can go back, make this our live surface, select our retopo object or a quadra object, boom. And then now I can actually model on the eye and the sculpt at the same time. Now there's one combined object, which is exactly what we wanted, all right? Because if I didn't have geometry here and I tried to add geometry for the eye, well, it would have just shrink wrapped and wrapped itself to the sculpt, which is not what we wanted, all right? So again, we're kind of working our way through here and moving some vertices so we can now combine. And let's just start essentially bridging and combining. I'm holding shift left click in order to add more geometry. Now, if you wanted to, you absolutely could have just taken this, extruded back, and then built that, okay? I'm just showing you different ways of doing the same thing. So if you were excited to learn about the Quadra tool for the first time and just wanted to use that, go for it, all right? And you can see now I'm going to just hold control left click and we're just conforming to the geometry, all right? And we have this here. We're going to move this. Now, if you want to move entire edge loops, right, you can use control middle mouse drag, control shift middle mouse drag, okay? And that's going to move the edges up. So I definitely need to move that down or up and then just kind of add more edges here, right? So we're just doing that. And especially when we model the ear in here, we're going to need that extra geometry anyways. So it all works out perfectly fine. Okay. All right. So we're just continuing on. I'll come back to here in a second. I just want to make sure I have enough kind of going underneath. All right. I'm just gonna see where we're at. Let me see if I can create this face loop that's running around. Okay, so what we can do is create a face loop that's gonna run like here, around here. Right, so you see that this is the face loop I'm referencing, okay? So we can add that, all right? And don't worry, we're gonna clean up this here momentarily. And I'd say we can definitely add one more here on the eye. So what's nice is we can just kind of move these guys over, make a little bit of room, and add another face loop, right? So take a look, make sure you know where that edge is routing, and it's routing all the way back underneath here. So make sure not to add edges that you weren't planning for, right? But it all still works perfectly within our geometry. And sometimes Quadra does act a little bit finicky, so you do have to jump into vertex mode and kind of pull it out and just kind of control middle mouse and then just position it and just move it basically. All right, and we're jumping back to Quadra mode. I think you guys see where we're going here. What I'm going to do actually is select our sphere here and our cube, and I'm just going to isolate because our body was getting in the way, right? It's just control 1 to isolate and Quadra, so you can kind of see where we're at here. Okay, yeah, let's just keep going here. What I'm gonna do is just kind of add, I think we're okay here. Let's just add, maybe connect this guy, this face here. And we can see now we can use this face loop to add more geometry, which is going to be perfect, right? So I'm going to move these guys in, and this gives us an edge loop to add more geometry, quite a few actually, without having to add it running down the other direction of the face, okay? So just make sure to kind of analyze your face loops and existing topology, and you should be able to, you know, intelligently and you know, plan to add face loops here, okay? So we're almost there. Here we got these two here, and maybe what I can do is take this face. So I'm going to delete this here and just do something like this, where this face loops now just kind of routes its way back to the middle of the head. okay? And then we can go back and reconnect these here, these faces here, and then that does give us this, oops, excuse me, there, and we can actually remove that. So did you see, maybe take a look back at kind of how I deleted it and just routed an edge here instead of routing it back underneath here, underneath the head. All right, so I think I'll do one more that's just running around here, which is fine. Maybe we can clean up some edges later, and there we go. Okay, now this is not a good example of even distribution of edges. Well, don't worry, there's a perfect tool to do that when you're doing quad draw, because I was kind of trying to prove my point here. Hold shift now and relax. Look at that, right? Remember, I was using that at the beginning for the head, and what this is going to do is just going to spread out your topology. So you can, right, as you're going, be a little bit sloppier just for the sake of speed, and then come back at the end and just relax these vertices, right? And it's going to even them out, and it's going to conform to the base mesh, right? And it's going to help prevent the issue of pinching edges and edges that are too close together. And all I'm doing is holding shift and left click, dragging. So I'm like painting the relax. So you can see it's working out really well here for us. Okay, so I think you get the idea. I'll probably do this a little bit more after the video, but all in all, this is coming across really well. Perfect. All right, so I think we're good. I think we made some good progress on the head. And what I want to do for the last step, you guys, is just quickly attach this to the body, right? So we have this, which is looking good. If we look at the overall form, right? Maybe we got half smooth, half not. So hold shift, right click, soften harden edges, harden edge. Perfect. So we can look at the overall form. He's looking pretty solid. Compare it with our reference images. He's looking pretty good. Maybe there's something adjustments that we can make, right? And we can maybe, I think this is fine. A little bit of discrepancy from the front to side view, but I'll just stick with one of the views and move forward. Okay. So what I want to do now is prepare the body for extrusion. So what I want to do is grab these faces here. And this is going to be the neck, okay? So I got to be careful about that. Let me left click drag with tab. So hold tab, left click. All right. This is going to be the base of the neck. And what I want to do first, well, actually, I don't want to do that one. I think this is what we want, right? And what this is going to give us is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is going to give us about 14 edges, okay? So it's not nothing too crazy. And if we take a look here, we're going to want to make sure we extrude roughly about the same, or exactly the same, okay? So let's go ahead and grab these, and let's just do an extrude, shift, left click, extrude. And we're going to offset a little bit, just like this, okay? Now, before we move this up and have to worry about, you know, going through, making it round, and doing all sorts of things, we can simply use, remember, circularize. So hold shift, right click, and circularize. Oh, just go ahead and apply that, and then it'll give us some settings here. It may look like you kind of did a little bit of crazy stuff, but don't worry, we can adjust these settings here. We want normal offset, so we're going to move this up just a little bit. You can see what normal offset is doing here. We'll move that up. Yeah, one's fine. And then radial offset, kind of scale that in. Great. And if we take a look here, you can kind of see it with the base of the neck. Maybe this is fine. We can always adjust. All right. And then you have, of course, twist. So you can see how it's a little bit off. And we can just kind of twist that back. Great. And so this now looks really good. All right. So now that we have that, we can just simply hold shift now Actually, make sure you guys, you can see our live surface, weird stuff's gonna happen if you don't disable live surface, okay? So no big deal, just disable live surface at the top. Now you can hold shift on the faces and extrude up, okay? So we're just going to, oh, you know what? I goofed. Let me, before I do that extrude, is position this base of the neck, right? So we actually want to rotate this forward now. I'm gonna get it in position here, and now we're good. Take a look at that. Great, perfect. And it's starting to look a little bit more natural. Cool, and then I'm just gonna simply extrude up, all right? We're gonna adjust these, maybe scale these up a little bit, just a little bit, and position it. And we're gonna do, you know, what we need to attach that with the head. Now, keep in mind, you guys, if we go ahead and select these edges, right, we have 14 edges here, all right? What I'm gonna do actually is just go to face mode and just outright delete these. So we know for a fact that we have 14 edges selected, okay? So Control 1, now let's go to the head. We can hide this, okay? And we can select the base of the head. And we wanna make sure we do the same thing, all right? We wanna make sure we select the proper amount of faces. So I believe it was, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have kind of 3 running across, 3 down. I believe it was something like this, where it was 2 across and 3 down. And we have 12 faces selected. And if we extrude that, we can just double check that. There we go, 14, perfect. So I'm gonna actually undo that. I just want to verify that we were good to go. Undo that again. And what we want to do is the same thing. Okay, you can see this is pretty close actually with what we have. So this worked out really well with the neck. And what I want to do is the same exact thing. We're gonna shift right click, extrude. We're just gonna give it an offset. An offset. Now shift right click, circularize. And give it a little bit of a twist. And radial offset. And just bring it down. Okay, so that's perfect. We can now use this to attach to our body. Look at that. So let me go ahead and grab these faces and delete them. And I will Control 1, exit isolate mode. And we're gonna select these now, jump to vertex mode, select these vertices on the head, and turn on edge faces. And we're gonna hold V on the keyboard or enable vertex snap here, and just snap these. And we're just gonna snap into the head. Okay. Don't worry if things aren't perfect. We'll do what we need to clean that up. We're just worrying about attaching it right now. There, and we got symmetry on, which saves us a bit of time. Perfect. Okay, I will probably go ahead and at least maybe move these guys back so they're not too stuck on there or in a weird position. Perfect. So let's go ahead now that we have everything snapped, and combine. So shift click, combine. And then I will jump to vertex mode, click, drag, select, like that. And then I will shift right click, go to merge vertices, and just give it a maybe 0.03. And what I actually want to do, you can see now it's merging one side but not the other. Let's just go ahead and re-symmetry this and re-mirror this. So I'm going to select the edge running down the middle. All the way down the middle. Perfect. Shift, right click, detach component, and then select the side that we want to delete. And it looks like, you know what, I'll just select the face loop and just, you know, to be 100% sure. Okay, and don't worry about it. Right here, I can just click, control click, drag select, make sure I have no vertices selected on the other side because it is behaving a little bit weird because what happened was, oh, of course, I need to disable symmetry here, of course. And what happens was Circularites did some weird things and broke our symmetry line. That's all that happened. But now I can just delete this, select his face, his head, body, everything, delete. Make sure everything looks like it's attached here so I can hit smooth preview. Everything looks like the only open face that we have is here where we want. So I'm going to grab the border edge here, but deselect the mouth. Scale these in one direction and turn on our grid and just use vertex snap here. Excuse me, grid snap here. All right. That's looking good. And I can finally do a mesh. Oh, you know what? Let's just keep using this. I always forget that they put mirror here. Shift right click, custom, and then apply. There we go. Fantastic tutorial. We're just going to detail the head. So we're going to finish up the eye, add the ear, and do the mouth. But all in all, I think he's looking really good, and he has good form. Remember, we didn't have to worry about planar modeling this and worrying about making sure that it's rounded and organic. And, you know, we were able to apply these principles of face loop, facial topology, form, all with the soft select sculpting tools and whatnot, and not have to worry about edge copying and making sure that it looks good. Great, guys. So everything's looking good. I will go ahead, we'll end it here, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.